Here we go. Hey, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our latest masterclass. My name's Dave Wilkins, founder of SDR Leaders of EMEA. And today we've got a returning guest to do our webinar, our masterclass called How to Move Your SDR Team from Spray and Pray to a Strategic Outreach when Reps Resist It. As we know, outbound is changing. Some say for the better, some might not. If some of these people, where it's call time of 4 hours, might think it's for the worst. And what we want to do today is have Lou share with you how she has approached it at the new organization she's at, which she joined at the end of last year, and give you some inspiration and some tips on what maybe you can do. Now, Michael, yes, we will be recording. It's going to be on our YouTube. Like and subscribe. That I'll put the link. I'm going to keep saying that until everybody's liked and subscribed it. So if you have questions just put them into the chat. I'll interrupt Lou as she goes through it. Lou, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dave. Well, first of all, hi everyone. Really, really happy to be here, and thanks, Dave, for inviting me again. I guess I will share a few slides that I prepared to organize my thoughts, I guess, on how I went about this process. As Dave said, I joined Celix, my current company, back in October 2025, so not too long ago. But that was at that point, I really saw there were some things I needed to change in terms of the outbound approach, and that's what I did. So let me share my screen now. Okay, can you see my screen now? Can you confirm? Yes. Okay, good. Good. So all right, let's get into it. So I guess first of all, oh, okay, a little bit about me. As Dave said, well, I'm now at Celix. I'm born and raised in Argentina, South America. I live in London, been here since 2018. And since then, I've been working in sales development roles, 6 in leadership, so since 2020, mainly focused on SDR teams, manage a few AEs initially, but it was mainly on SDR teams. And I would say the vast majority of my experience has been in early stage tech startups, typically B2B. And I would say I'm quite focused on data on one side, and I really enjoy that slight chaos from the early stage startups. I think like that. It's just fun to me, and I love sort of fixing the processes, building new ones when everything feels a little bit chaotic. So that is who I am. And today I wanted to talk about this change that I made at my current company. So this was what the problem was when I joined Celix. Essentially, the team was missing target overall in terms of SQLs. We're targeting on SQLs, and also a big reason for that was that the conversion rates were not great. So in terms of attainment, the average was between 60 and 70%, also getting to as low as 44% one month. The meeting booked to attended rate was 62%. So we hire really, really high no-show rates and cancellation rates. And then the overall meeting to SQL rate was only 39%. So there were a lot of meetings being booked in terms of volume, but then the attended ones were not that many. And obviously the ones converting to SQLs were even fewer. So after these changes, this is what I managed to achieve, which I'm quite happy about. We finished March at 110% to target. It was the best month in the history of the company in terms of SQLs. And we actually drove for that month 83% of all of the business pipeline by the whole GTM organization. So that's counting marketing, AEs, partnerships, and SDRs. And then in terms of Q1 from this year versus Q4 from 2025, which is when I joined. We almost got a 50% increase in actual opportunities, an increase in pipeline generated as well in terms of dollar value. And again, in terms of the whole quarter, it was a 74% contribution from the SDRs to the whole pipeline generated. So the team has grown quite a lot as well, and I think this change was instrumental to achieve these results. So I just wanted to talk about how I went about this. Essentially, my overall philosophy, and this is not just about this change, but it is something that it's a framework that I use to think about any SDR team that I work with, is these three P's: people, process, and practice. So when it comes to people, I think about the mindset, the culture, and everything related to how you hire, how you onboard people, but also in this case, what type of mentality changes you might need to do. In terms of processes, what are the actual processes that I changed when it comes to accounts, book of business, when it comes to playbooks, tools, even running a boot camp. I'm going to go into that in a second. And then in terms of practice, how do we go about actually monitoring what was going on, coaching and measuring whether the new process was working or not working. So when it comes to people, which is the first P, this is how I went about this. What I thought at the beginning was there was no point, and bear in mind, I was a new leader at the company, so I didn't really know them. They didn't really know me. So there was very little built trust at that point because I was new. So I tried to reframe the why and really try to make them understand why we needed to change, and showing that change at that point was not optional because the team was again averaging 60 to 70%. So there was no way that we could meet the business targets if we were keeping in that working in that way. So showing that the change was not optional, and it just needed to happen. And something that I feel really, really helped me was essentially winning or getting the buy-in from the seniors first. And bear in mind, at that point, when I say the seniors, I mean the more tenure reps that I later promoted into senior SDRs. At that point, I didn't even have a senior SDR position at the business. But my point was, I quickly realized that there was, because the team was a decent amount of reps, we had over 10 reps. Something that I really understood or realized was the herd mentality was real. And if someone was thinking, oh, this doesn't work, then everyone was going to think that. And especially if it's someone who has been in the business for a long time, because the new joiners tend to automatically think whatever the tenure reps are thinking. So in my perspective, getting that buy-in and getting the seniors to set the tone was really, really important, because then I was to some degree putting it on them as seniors to help me drive adoption. So I almost made it their duty to say, right, you're a senior, you're a tenure rep. I need you to help me get that buy-in. I need you to help me get that adoption from everyone else, right? If you're on board with this, then everyone else will be. And I think that was a quick or tiny thing that really helped, because obviously no one was going to come to me and say, I don't believe in this, because I was obviously the leader and I was new. But obviously the reps talk to each other, and I knew they will. So getting that buy-in was quite important, because I knew those conversations were going to happen. Probably not with me, but they were still going to talk. And in the same way, at the time, the two leaders that I had working with me, both of them were actually first-time leaders, and they were promoted from a previous era when they were doing a spray and pray. So they actually didn't know anything different themselves. So it wasn't only getting the buy-in from the reps, but even from the leaders, because they didn't even know how to do this in a different way. So I think it was key for me to show the managers what good looked like at the same time as to the reps. and make sure that they knew how to enforce that, because otherwise there was no point in training the reps if then the managers themselves didn't believe in that process, right? Or in that new strategy, I guess. Um, so that was all about changing the mindset, and again, just getting the buy-in from the most senior people in your team, who are going to help get the buy-in naturally from everyone else, because the new people tend to follow the more tenure reps. Um, in terms of the process, I did do quite a few bits around this, and there were a few areas that I made a lot of changes in. The first one was the accounts, the book of business, essentially. When I joined, everyone, and this might look insane to you, because I'm sure like in your companies maybe it's not like this, but it was a bit like the Wild West. Everyone could take accounts from each other. There was no control. You could, as an SDR, you could go into the CRM and just take an account, no permission from anyone. You could take an account that was owned by someone else, and there was um, nothing preventing you from doing that. So when I learned about that, I immediately cut that off. Did they hate me for that? Yes, they probably hated me for it, because I was cutting off the ability for them to just take accounts. And I also introduced a cap on the book of business, this being because some people were holding 700 accounts under the name. And that was obviously unmanageable. But at the time, because they were working in that mindset of more is better and I need more accounts and more accounts and more accounts, obviously there was no, I guess, no limit. So I made those two decisions, and yes, admittedly, probably they question it at the beginning. But I was, again, with the seniors and with the managers, communicating the idea of we are scaling. There's no way to scale without introducing a little bit of a structure. We have new people, these people need accounts. There's no way that someone can hold 800 accounts and be efficient with working those accounts, right? So I think cutting off anything that doesn't work, even though, again, it was a shock to the team, but it was something that needed to be done. And then introducing segmentation based on our three segments. We have mid-market, small enterprise, and large enterprise, and then assigning accounts to the reps based on those segments was also a new thing. They used to have a mix of accounts, like no one was working in a specific segment. So going deeper and not wider, and not allowing anyone to hold 500 accounts anymore was step number one. Then the second step was basically creating or revamping the whole SDR playbook, and that was including introducing this real account research. The team before I joined was pretty much not doing any account research, even though they were working enterprise accounts, and you might find that to be incredible. But even though it was enterprise level, they were doing a spray and pray. There was no account research, no way to prioritize accounts. They were just going with targeting accounts just based on the latest account that they took, or maybe going by alphabetical order, or whatever random order there was, but there was no sense of choosing accounts to prioritize based on certain signals. And the other aspect was the sequences being used were not really persona based or persona focused or persona built. There were just one or two random sequences. One was fully automated, the other one was like a little bit more manual, but they were not focused on the personas. At the time, we had four personas, well, we still do, four key personas that we target, and I built one sequence for each persona, with messaging obviously tailored to that persona specifically, based on the table that we had that marketing built around challenges, goals, pain points, etc., etc. Tools was another thing that I introduced. We use Notion at Celix, and Notion comes with Notion AI. Admittedly, I'm not going to lie on this. I am 100% not an expert on AI. It's definitely not my biggest strength. But we did build the first few agents, one for account research and one for messaging. And that was already a big improvement based because it was going from zero to at least having two functional, useful agents that we could use. We also made a move from Aurum into Nux for dialing. We were struggling with connect rates, and that move was beneficial because it made our connect rates jump pretty much automatically. And I also did some retraining on tech stack that they already had, but no one was using that well. And a good example of that is LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I am a big fan of that in past companies. I always had my reps trained really well on that, and this was no exception. They all had access to Sales Nav, but no one was really using it, other than obviously to map an account and find the contact, but no one was really using it to identify good leads or good accounts to prioritize. So there was a retraining that on what we already had that maybe we were not really making the most out of.
Lou, question in the chat from Jordan.
Yeah,
In the new sequences that you built, are the emails automatic or manual?
yeah, good question. The first one is manual. The first one is the one that we produced with the Notion AI agent that we created. We don't send by Notion AI, I mean the agent produces the first draft, then obviously the SDR reviews and then sends. We don't send messages with no human review. That is the first email, and then the rest of the emails are automated based on the persona profile. Cool. Should I? Sorry, I can see like there are some questions. Should I just keep answering the questions or should I just keep going, Dave?
Oh, sorry, my computer is being really annoying and slow, so it's I couldn't unmute for a while. There was another question that came in from, let's go to Tanvir first.
Yeah.
If the computer will not, now my computer's frozen. Yeah, he said, what is your thinking behind the progression from SDR to senior SDR when the role itself seems fairly similar day to day?
Yeah, yeah. I think like from my perspective and what we've done at Celix is building that next step as not only obviously a next step before moving out of the SEO organization and into a roles or any other roles, but mainly as a way to build a set of people within the team that can lead the change, as I said, and help with adopting new processes, new methodologies, but also can be the people helping the managers to coach. So we typically have the senior SDRs at Celix running sessions, being involved in projects. One of them is now being involved in actually taking the existing agents and getting them to V2 or V3. So they typically get involved in projects with either myself or other business functions to improve our processes, to coach the new joiners. They get involved in onboarding as well of the new joiners.
Great. And then finally, and then I'll let you continue on. Sarah
Yeah.
asked, how long from when you are entering the business to seeing results? And how was this risky change received by your senior leadership, considering you were new in the role and looking to change? What has been working for them thus far?
Yeah. So the answer to the first question is it was 4 months. I joined end of October. November was obviously my onboarding and just starting to look at the changes. End of November was when I did this 2-day boot camp that I'm going to talk about in a second. That's when I would say was the start of this process. So it was pretty much December and then Q1 this year, so 4 months. And the second question, I don't think it was, and the reason was because it wasn't really working. When we say I was looking to change what was working for them, it wasn't, right? And I was brought in to raise that performance from the average 60 to 70%. That to them and to me was not good enough. So that was the whole point, right? I mean, yes, there is a risk to any change, any process change, but I think the benefit of raising that performance was much was the reason why they didn't perceive that as risky. I mean, I guess the worst case scenario was we were going to still do 60 or 70% to target, right? So, okay. Good. So, as I say, with all of this that I basically did, so when I when I did the changes with the accounts, the CRM, book of business, all of that, plus creating the new playbook, I then run this 2-day boot camp. Obviously, happy to share the agenda and everything with anyone if you want it after this. But it was basically a 2-day boot camp in the office. They didn't do anything else other than this. No distractions, and it was essentially covering the full funnel and going through the full process from right. This is your new book of business. How do you prioritize your accounts? How do you research? How do you map? How do you create the messaging? How do you go about a cold call? And how do you then book a meeting and do the handover to an AE? So we covered the full funnel, and the way that it worked was one topic, one practice slot, one topic, one practice slot. I didn't want to do it just all at once because, again, it was a team that was completely used to a completely different way of working. I knew it was going to be a huge change for them. So I didn't want to just throw everything at once. So it was more like, right, let's learn this, let's practice this now. Now let's do account research. Right, now go and research your accounts. Now let's create messaging. Okay, go and create the messaging. Because otherwise it was going to be just, it was already a lot, but it was going to be even worse if we had done it just all the sessions at once with no practice in the middle. So that was what I did at the end of November. So that was the month after the second month after I joined. So I joined in October. That was in November. And then after that, right after that, I met with the sales leadership. So the VP of sales, the sales managers, and we redefined what the SQL criteria was. There was a lot of gray area. Admittedly, there's still a small percentage. I'm not going to lie and say like there's no dispute ever. There still is, but it's probably 90% reduced to what it was before. So we redefined what the SQL criteria is. And we also redefined, and this was myself and the SEO managers, what the meeting actually meant. Because one thing that I identified as well was there was a lot of confusion around what is really a meeting that you should be putting as a meeting booked. And there was a confusion with meeting versus callback. A lot of people were treating something that was like, right, okay, yeah, call me back tomorrow with no discovery ever done as a meeting booked. And that was not a meeting booked. We shouldn't be putting that in front of an AE. There was nowhere near enough qualification already done. So there was also some training and enablement done on the reps on, okay, this is what classifies as a callback and this is what is a meeting. And if you don't have this criteria, then don't book it as a meeting. You need to call back that person and actually do more work before considering that a meeting that you put in front of an AE, right? Because it's not qualified just yet. And the sequence bit is what I said before, Jordan. I turned that one generic sequence into 4 persona-specific ones. Not fully manual. It's the first email is manual, and then the rest is automated. And I will say it's also quite phone heavy, just because at Celix specifically, the phone is the number 1 channel by far. So I was also focusing on the channel that I knew we could win more. Oh, okay. And one more thing, I think like the main takeaway from the bootcamp, and I think this is what also summarizes the whole move from spray and pray into strategic outreach, is the focus was on making the reps understand what it actually means to connect the dots and what real personalization means. At the beginning, when we first did the boot camp, and then they started doing the personalization, lots of them were making this mistake. They were mentioning the hook, which was, I've noticed X, Y, and Z, and then going straight into, by the way, Celix does X, Y, and Z. There was no bridge, no connection whatsoever between the opener and the pitch. So then obviously we had to do a lot of coaching on, okay, you're missing this bit. You need to actually connect the dots between what you're saying, what is your insight, what is your trigger, what is your observation, and the value proposition that we can offer at Celix. That if that is not connected, then this is almost irrelevant because it's what I call fake personalization. It sounds personalized, but it's not actually personalized because it doesn't really make sense. So I think this was the key takeaway and what probably took the most time for the reps to understand. They were very quick to find the insights. That was easy. They had the Notion AI agents. That was the easy bit. The tough bit was making them understand that it wasn't just about saying, I've noticed this is what we do at Celix, but actually finding that bridge in between the two elements, the hook and the pitch.
So Lou, there's another question come through from Fiona.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on calls more. Were they calling before this approach, or was this a whole new approach for them? And if it was
Yes, they
that
were calling.
change, if it was a big
Yeah.
of a change,
So
how did you
yes.
get them to feel comfortable calling and not be scared to pick it up?
Yeah, so I think the answer to the first question is yes, they were calling before. Even though the approach was different, they were calling with a Celix focus approach, right? Hi, I'm calling from Celix. This is what we do. Are you interested? Yes or no? This was basically what they were saying. Um, so the shift was okay, we need to call these people, but not talking about us. And we shifted that focus to the prospect or the account that we were calling, right? And I would say, in terms of getting them to feel comfortable calling, to be completely honest with you, that is not something that I'm experiencing at Celix. It's by far I guess, the team that has been the easiest to get to call. They're just because they know it's the number one channel and it's the one that actually gets them conversations. They're not afraid of the phones. But I would say one thing that I definitely maintained was no calls outside of the sales floor. No one goes out of the sales floor to make calls. They all make it there, even if it's their second day on the company. I don't care. They just do it on the sales floor next to each other. And we also mixed. We changed it might seem like a school thing, but we also changed the seats where all of them sit, and we actually came up with a seating plan where we mixed the most tenured people with the newbies. Otherwise, all the newbies were sitting together. No one knows what they're doing, and then all of the tenure reps were sitting together. So we changed and we actually made a seating plan. So then everyone, all of the new people, were at least next to one person that was tenured and doing well. So then they could just hear them call throughout the day. Okay. Then this is basically the last bit. So the last part was practice, and my thinking at the time was right. Celix is at a point where a lot of things need to change and a lot of things need to improve. I was only one leader, and I had at the time one manager. Thank God, now I've got another one. But at the time, I was managing the other half of the team because I didn't have the second manager. So both myself and the other manager were really limited on time. Our capacity was just limited. So I decided to focus on the channel that was going to move the needle more. On that quarter, and I knew that was the phone because, as I said, 95% more, probably more than the meetings that we were booking were booked on the phone. LinkedIn was starting to become a little bit of a better channel for us. Email was, and to this day, is not really our best channel. I'm gonna admit that. So I said, right, let's focus on what the best channel is, and let's just focus our efforts on that because we didn't have capacity to just focus on everything. So because of that, we focus on individual call reviews. And I know in lots of teams there are sort of team sessions done, and I'm not saying that is not useful. But at the time, what I found was each rep was stuck in something different. And they really needed different levels of coaching. So we actually took the time to set individual call reviews on a weekly basis. So then all of them could come in with their own calls. And it's not just we review one call among everyone, but then no one gets a lot of coaching on their own calls, if that makes sense. So we found that just focusing more time on each rep was really useful. All of the classic coaching areas, right? Like coaching and openers, pitching, objection handling, everything that we could essentially coach them on based on the data that we were seeing. Worth noting that before then, and as I launched this new process, I rebuilt the KPIs. I attended a conference last year, and there was a lady, I think it's Marlena, I can't remember his name, but she essentially presented in that conference. She presented a formula to calculate KPIs, which I really liked. Can share that as well. And I rebuilt the KPIs based on that formula, and then that was what we used as a basis to then track the gaps and understanding, right, okay, if the KPIs are this and then we see this conversion rates, obviously the KPIs were not just volume. I made a conscious decision to just include conversion rate KPIs. Anyone that was below the average needed coaching on those specific areas. And because we moved to Nooks, we were getting reporting from them on a lot of different metrics that I quite like. One thing that I quite liked about Nooks was I was able to then see what is the percentage of people that they're calling in a certain week that is new. So are they calling the same people over and over again, or are they actually calling a good percentage of new people when they go into a new week? I found that to be quite telling for some reps that were just stuck in the same accounts and not wanting to let them go and not wanting to try new accounts. So that was quite telling as well. Um, and I think, yeah, just to finish, my main, I guess, four takeaways from this that I would love to share are um, getting that buy-in, as I said, with maybe the most tenure reps and the managers, if you're managing managers, but essentially selling the why. Actually, when I did the boot camp, every single session started with a slide which was called "Why are we doing this?" And I thought that was important because, again, I was presenting a completely new process. They had no idea why we're doing this or why it was needed. It was scary, and I thought it was needed to really show the why. So I think that helped ease their concerns because they could understand why we were actually even bothering making that huge change. Um, Number two, probably get rid of the Wild West if you have that kind of environment like I did, and not being afraid to cut off permissions, change the book of business, even though, yes, the reps might hate you for a little bit, but then over time, they're going to realize it was for the best. So maybe just not being afraid to make those changes that might be shocking at the beginning, but they are needed. And that point is around what I mentioned in the previous slide. Just making sure that they understand it's not just about finding the insight and then pitching, but actually focusing on that bridge. It is, in my opinion, the most important thing when it comes to personalizing outreach and becoming strategic. Anyone, especially with AI, anyone can find an insight, anyone can find something to say. But if you're not really making sense of that, then it doesn't even matter. Um, and then again, focusing on what's going to move the needle. If you know your reps are good on the phones, then go for the phones. I'm not saying that I'm completely ignoring email, but I needed to just do or get like a quick win initially, and then now I have the time to say, right, okay, now let's take a look at the emails. Let's see how we can scale LinkedIn. But I needed to focus on what was going to move the needle more quickly. Good. When I read the messages, sorry.
I'm starting to write rubbish in there. Sorry, Lou.
Okay.
Sarah did have a question about Do you have recommendations for what works well in the bridge step?
Yes. So I think that the probably the first step was showing them examples, examples that I wrote, that they could write, obviously for any prospect, right? So showing what I meant with that hook, bridge, and pitch with actual examples, so then they could understand. Okay, what does that actually look like in practice? And then we were also doing some in the same way that we were doing call reviews with some of them. We were doing email reviews, and I was literally just pointing out, okay, where's the bridge here? And they were like, I don't know, I don't know. So then it's just showing them, where do you think there is a bridge? If they cannot tell where is the bridge, it's missing.
Brilliant. And then there's a question that came in. I'm going to read it as it was written. So, Max, if there's any clarification needed, please tell me. Is it all about the phone now as opposed to emails? Can you give an actual example?
If I don't know if that question is about like selling specifically or just the industry. I don't know what everyone else is doing, to be honest. I would say for Celix, yes, it's 95% of our meetings are coming from the phone. Um, we are not booking that much on emails, and I think it's probably due to the fact that a lot of emails nowadays are automated, and just breaking through that noise is becoming harder and harder than ever. But even though, yes, there might be like some AI call callers, it's not that many as emails. So I think, yeah, I think at least in Celix, it is definitely about the phone, but I'm not sure if it's about like everyone else.
And I think as well, Max, you asked about a question about the bridge piece. I think we just gave an example just then, Lou.
Oh, okay. Where's example? Sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think you
Uh,
already gave an example, is what I'm
yeah.
saying.
Sorry for yeah. Okay. So
So,
when I talk about the bridge, I basically mean the bridge in the messaging that you're sending um to the prospect, right? So for example, well, in my case, I sell to accounts payable leaders, senior finance leaders. So maybe one, just to give like a very quick example, one example of an email could be, or of a messaging could be, oh, I've noticed that you have a high volume of invoice volume, sorry, a high annual invoice volume because you're managing 300 branches across the UK. That would be my observation or my trigger, right? That is something that I observe, I can see from publicly available information. Then the bridge would be, I imagine that probably keeping controls over invoice errors might be a priority for you. Most people in your role, whatever, like that could be AP leader or whatever, most people typically struggle with hidden invoice errors among a lot of false positives in the processes. So that would be the bridge, and then the pitch would be, here at Telex, we actually provide an AI-driven AP control center that surfaces the real invoice errors and eliminates all false positives, for example. That was a really bad pitch, but my point is just bridging or making the connection between what I saw, what I noticed, and then our pitch. I don't know
nice
if
one.
that made sense.
Made sense. Jordan has a question. Do you have minimum engagement attempts per contact/account before reps can drop an account?
We do not at the minute, but it is something that we are looking to implement. The current discussion is around essentially doing two overall touch points, and when I say overall touch point, I mean two rounds of sequences, and then that is the current proposed method. So if the rep has done two rounds of sequencing to an account, then the account goes into a cool off period. But it's not implemented just yet. It's just what we are discussing right now.
Nice one. So if there's anybody else that has a question, they're more than happy to come off mute for a second.
Hi, good. Hi, I'm Valerie. I I saw in one of the slides there was something around the AI, but I might have missed something. How to use AI apart from the research? What tools you use? Because I've built a bot for research for GPT as well, but I was
Mhm.
wondering if there's anything else you use or how you use it. Do you have any tips?
Yeah,
Thank you.
so again, I'm not the best expert at AI, but the way that we are that we're using it right now is we build two agents, one for account research, and the second one is for messaging. So the way that it works is the first agent, you just put the name of the account, and it just basically gives you the whole list of relevant research based on obviously what is relevant to us. And then in the second one, you input a bullet pointed list of your essentially your research and any insights that you might have from maybe previous conversations or anything else, any other signal. And then it creates the messaging following the framework that I essentially launched in that bootcamp. So in that bootcamp, I launched a framework for email, and then the agent is built following that framework. So then it creates the email following that framework based on the insights that they have.
Thank you.
No worries.
Brilliant. Lou, thanks ever so much for that. That was really insightful, and it's great to see the kind of change management you were going through as a leader. I think that's something that a lot of people can take a lot from. So really appreciate that you came in and shared that. And thank you so much, everybody, for all the questions that you all shared. So as I said, to get the record, you'll get the link to the recording, but make sure that you like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's got 100 plus videos now from all of our sessions over the last few years. So it's a real treasure trove of insights and knowledge. And you'll also find Lou's last masterclass on there as well. So thank you ever so much, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Oh.